This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
We bring you the latest on the coronavirus outbreak, even as the WHO says it is not yet a pandemic. The Democratic Republic of Congo reports a significant decline in rate of new Ebola infections. And the UN says Libya warring factions showing genuine will for negotiations ahead of the Geneva peace talks. Welcome. You are watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here are more stories making headlines in the world of business with Uche.
Thanks, Hannah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Vodacom plans to launch 5G services in South Africa this year. And a 45% stake of Egypt's Bank Ducaire is up for sale. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you.
Thank you so much, Uche. We'll see you in a bit. But for now, we begin with the latest on the coronavirus outbreak in China. The death toll stands at 426. Hubei accounts for 414 of the deaths. Hong Kong has reported the first death in the city. The patient was a 39-year-old male Hong Kong resident who had recently traveled to Wuhan. The total number of persons confirmed with the virus in China stands at more than 20,500. Over 700 people have recovered nationwide. In Hubei province, the epicenter of the outbreak, there were more than 2,300 new cases on Monday. There are some 23,000 suspected cases across China. The virus is spread to 23 other countries with a total of 174 confirmed cases. Thailand has the most cases outside of China with 25 patients. Singapore with 24 after it recorded 6
epidemic. We have a good coordination. The Chinese embassy has welcomed the measures taken by the Tunisian Ministry of Health.
Observers have urged the national and international media to deal with the corona outbreak in a scientific manner and not to exaggerate facts.
Over 700 Chinese people and some foreigners infected with the coronavirus were saved by competent Chinese medical staff. The world should not panic. We are confident that China and its partners will find the antidote.
The Minister of Health declared that authorities do not intend to send a Tunisian medical team to China or any other destination as part of the monitoring and prevention against coronavirus among Tunisians living abroad. 10 Tunisian nationals were evacuated on board of the plane sent by the Algerian authorities to repatriate their citizens. In addition to the medical check conducted by the Chinese authorities, all persons on board the plane will undergo additional medical tests at home in Algeria and Tunisia. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
We move over to Senegal now, where at the beginning of each month, Senegal holds a traditional flag-raising ceremony at the presidential palace in Dakar. President Macky Sall gives speeches on important national topics. In the latest ceremony held on Monday, the president expressed his solidarity with China in their fight against the coronavirus.
Je voudrais exprimer encore une fois ma solidarité.
I would like to once again express my solidarity with all the countries that have been affected, and particularly with China. Since the outbreak of the epidemic, it's been an extremely difficult situation. We can see it clearly. The risks of contamination or contagion are quite significant.
On le voit bien.
And we must hope that in countries like ours, we do not end up with such a situation soon, because we need a robust health system to be able to cope with it. Besides, so far we're at this level because China has taken very big confinement and also special medical measures.
Pour pouvoir faire face.
The Democratic Republic of Congo has reported a significant decline in the rate of Ebola infections. In a 3-day period, only one case has been confirmed in the eastern city of Beni. CGTN's Kusa Chambringa reports.
Congolese health officials say the new Ebola case is from the Beni region in North Kivu province. The area has had a spike in attacks against civilians by militia groups. Authorities have recorded no Ebola deaths over the past 3 days. The only Ebola case reported in Beni is a sharp contrast from the 100 cases that were reported every week between June and August last year. The World Health Organization says the recent trends are encouraging, but warned that insecurity incidents could cause the disease to flare up again. An attack by rebels in November last year caused the disease to spread to other areas. Health officials are investigating 451 suspected Ebola cases. More than 2,200 people have died of the disease since August 2018. The outbreak can only be declared over after 42 days have elapsed since the last case tested negative. Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
At least 20 people have been killed and more than 20 others injured in fierce fighting in Somalia's southern region of Lower Juba. Local officials say inter-clan fighting erupted in the outskirts of Kismayo town. Two Somali clans have a dispute over control of farmland. The clans have been fighting for the last 3 days. Jubaland administration is trying to stop the fighting, but their efforts have not succeeded yet. The United Nations envoy to Libya, Ghassan Salameh, says there is a genuine will for negotiations to begin between rival military factions in Libya. This comes as the warring parties plan to meet for the first time for talks in Geneva. The talks are aimed at securing a lasting ceasefire. However, envoy Salameh says that an arms embargo is being violated by both sides and that new mercenaries as well as arms are still arriving into the country by air and by sea.
The arms embargo imposed in 2011 has been violated incessantly since that date. The Berlin Conference called for a better respect of this resolution. What I told the Security Council is that this respect is not there, that we have evidence of new equipments, but also new fighters, non-Libyan fighters, joining the two camps. These talks in Geneva are meant to listen carefully to the position of the two sides on what are the conditions for them to accept this translation of a truce into a permanent and lasting ceasefire. And then the two sides will accept what they would have negotiated calmly, quietly in Geneva in order to produce that agreement.
It's time now for us to take a short break and return. More news making headlines, including Kenya in mourning after second President Daniel Arap Moi dies at the age of 95. And we take stock of the battle against cancer in Africa.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching News Making Headlines right here on Africa Live. Well, Kenya is mourning the passing of its second president, Daniel Arap Moi. The office of the president announced his death early on Tuesday. President Uhuru Kenyatta has described the late president as a man who spent almost his entire adult life serving Kenya and Africa. Flags will be flown at half-mast until the day of the former president's state funeral. There was no immediate information on the cause of Moi's death, but he had been in and out of hospital with breathing problems in recent months. He was 95. President Moi was in power for 24 years. CGTN's Robert Nagila looks back at the life of a man who was considered a master strategist in politics until he relinquished power in 2002.
Born on September 2nd, 1924, in a small village in the Rift Valley, Daniel Arap Moi, the son of a herdsman, would go on to become Kenya's longest-serving president, ruling the East African nation with an iron fist for 24 years. He became president on August 22nd, 1978, following the death of Kenya's first president, Jomo Kenyatta. He would go on to win all elections, many under controversial circumstances, during the single-party rule and in the multi-party era, maintaining a tight grip on power. It's widely believed the soft-spoken politician's character changed in 1982 after an attempted coup by the Kenya Air Force, which was crushed by the army. It was then a dark period in Kenya's history ensued, where opposition to his leadership was brutally crushed. Moi served as chairman of the defunct Organization of African Unity for 2 consecutive terms in 1981 and 1982. A teacher by training, he promoted education throughout his tenure and had several schools named after him. He was passionate about the environment, encouraging Kenyans to plant trees and conserve the environment. He was widely credited with regional mediation efforts in Uganda, the DRC, Somalia, Chad, South Sudan, Mozambique, Ethiopia and Eritrea, Rwanda and Burundi.
The root causes of this conflict are so complex that numerous previous initiatives have failed to arrive at a peaceful settlement.
As president, he contributed peacekeeping forces to troubled parts around the world. Moi supported the establishment of regional economic bodies such as the East African Community as a means for developing countries to have a united voice in the global economy. Critics, however, accuse him of overseeing one of the most corrupt administrations in Kenya and amassing incredible wealth for himself and his family along the way. On 30th December 2002, Daniel Arap Moi handed over power to Mwai Kibaki in a peaceful transition.
My one message to you is that you should support our new president and our country and give up the good work that you have done so well.
Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Let's now turn to South Sudan, where South Africa's deputy president, David Mabuza, has arrived in Juba. Mabuza is in the capital in an effort to mediate the country's peace process. President Salva Kiir and the opposition have yet to agree on the number of states and their boundaries. Opposition leader Riek Machar is expected to arrive in Juba on Wednesday. The signing of the 2018 peace deal marked an historic moment for the country, ending years of conflict. However, a unity government has not yet been formed. February 22nd has been set as a deadline for its formation. Well, our correspondent Patrick Ayet is joining us live from Juba now for more on that story. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. Let's just start with the parties who seem to be under pressure to meet the deadline. But has there been any progress towards resolving the remaining contentious issues regarding the number of states and also their boundaries?
There is enormous pressure actually on the government and the opposition here in South Sudan. The pressure is that one, they should form the government as scheduled, that is on 22nd of this month. Number two is that they should resolve the outstanding issues. Now, in as far as this is concerned, it is difficult to say progress has been made. But when you ask South Africa, which has been mediating on the issue of the number of states, it is saying, yes, progress has been made. They say that one, when South Africa came in to mediate on the issue of number of states, each party, which by the way are about 5 in total, the other opposition groups, had different views on how many states should be in South Sudan and their boundaries. Now there are only 2 positions. All opposition groups now have 1 position and the government has 1 position. But to try to resolve this issue totally and move the process forward has become difficult. Now, in January, the South Africa's deputy president was here in Juba before coming this time, of course, and he had a proposal that one of the proposals is that the government should be formed as scheduled, that is 22nd of this month. In case there is disagreement over the issue of the number of states as it is, then that issue should be taken forward. When the government is formed, they should go to an arbitration mechanism. So he is here once again and to talk to the parties. The first priority is going to be to try to resolve the issue. If they are unable to resolve the issue, then they should agree that they are going to form the government and then resolve this issue later. When he brought in this proposal, the parties say they want a time for consultation. So the time that has been given for consultation has now expired. It is now time for him to listen to what proposals the parties have and then see whether progress will be made in this regard.
Patrick, other than these 2 issues that we've mentioned now, the number of states and their boundaries, what else is on the cards for this meeting set for Wednesday?
Yes, as I stated before, in January when the Deputy President of South Africa was here, he brought in this proposal that let us form the government when 22nd of Feb comes, and let us take this issue to an arbitration mechanism if we don't agree. But now the parties asked for time. They said they wanted time, they wanted to consult with their members and then come up with a way forward, because if it comes to the issue of arbitration mechanism, then there are technicalities involved. Who are the people who are going to be in this committee for arbitration? Where will it even take place? What will be the procedure of receiving, for example, presentation from those who are conflicting? So these are some of the things they say they wanted to consult on. So we expect that on Wednesday when they meet, they will start this presentation on what their consultations are all about.
Thank you so much for joining us, Patrick Ayet, joining us live from Juba. Well, as World Cancer Day is marked, a region in Kenya is struggling with an upsurge in the number of cases. Homesteads across Meru County in Kenya's eastern region have reported a significant number of cancer cases over the years. This has sparked a fact-finding mission by the Kenya Medical Research Institute. CGTN's Wilkinson Nyawa has the details.
The sound of metal scooping the earth eclipsed all other sounds. In a few hours, a man would be buried here. The deceased succumbed to cancer and would be laid to rest on his farm in the hills of Meru County. Barely a kilometer away, Another family mourned the death of a loved one. Mary, David Kirimi's wife, succumbed to breast cancer last November. The disease crept up on her silently at first, and then more viciously as it progressed, until it claimed the life of the mother of 3.
It is a very painful disease and very costly as well. It costs more than school fees. The family suffers because when you do not have the money, you have to borrow from everyone, even from outsiders. It is very difficult.
And hardly 2 kilometers from that grieving homestead, Alith Kenya mustered the strength to do the day's washing. She waited for breast cancer treatment for over a year.
I found a lump on my chest, but thought it had been caused by the cold. Then I went to hospital and got tested for cancer, but they said they couldn't operate as it would get worse. So I came home.
Well-wishers are now helping her to access treatment, but the disease has progressed greatly. It is a story that echoes across these hills, a story of numerous homes in this region visited by this scourge that is cancer.
Nearly all the families in Meru County have been affected in one way or another by the cancer issue. They either know a member who has been a victim of the family or a friend of the family.
For years, there have been reports of high incidence of cancer in Meru. Between 2015 and 2016, Meru recorded 1,633 new cases of cancer. Riaki and Kiegoi villages were reported as the most affected areas, and the diagnosis left many families reeling. Kenya's fundraiser, for example, yielded just $200, making it difficult for her to seek treatment at the country's largest referral hospital in Nairobi. The county responded to the unfolding situation by establishing an oncology unit at the Meru Public Hospital. It came as a relief.
Doctors in this facility found that it was overwhelming to always have these patients who have cancer, and a lot of times we would just refer them to Nairobi for chemotherapy. And so we started in a smaller room within the facility.
That room has grown into a unit that receives 40 new cancer patients every week and serves 60 daily. But medics still haven't figured out why they're seeing these cases. In a bid to shed more light, the Kenya Medical Research Institute officials and other scientists visited the area to collect data about cancer.
This is actually something happening in that area, either genetic, environment, or some pollution that's happening in that area. They even thought that there was some meteorite that fell there. That's what they claimed. And there was water coming from underground, which is true, it's coming from underground. But whether it has got radioactive or not, we have to confirm that.
Locals have also raised concerns about the use of pesticides on the cat plant, which is grown and widely consumed in the area. But all these theories are yet to be proven.
Later on, a bigger study to really confirm the real populations who have cancer and how they're distributed, their behavior, what they eat, what they do, all those things there will be a much larger study when we look for more funds to do it in the near future.
Meru County has organized a mountain run to help raise funds to establish a cancer institute to tackle cancer. The cancer screening and oncology units here at Meru Level 5 Hospital are a lifeline for cancer patients, given that early diagnosis and treatment is vital in the management of cancer. However, medics here still hope to one day set up a larger cancer institute that would give them insights as to why some cases of cancer are prevalent in regions around this area. But for residents, the most important concern remains identifying the causes of cancer. And for that, they may have to wait a little longer. Wilkisanyabwa, CGTN, Meru, Kenya.
We're staying on health matters. According to Non-Communicable Disease Alliance, cervical cancer caused by the human papilloma virus is a leading cause of death among women in the Middle East and North Africa. The high mortality rates have created an urgent push to provide HPV vaccinations in many countries, including Tunisia. CGTN's Adnan Shiwashi filed this report.
The Tunisia Board of Family and Population is one of the state agencies in charge of providing vaccinations to women, girls, as well as to boys across the country.
Our role is to provide counseling, information and care to patients who are fighting cancer. Prevention is also one of our objectives through the vaccination campaign.
Dozens of civil society organizations and associations have launched a cancer awareness campaign at public hospitals to mark World Cancer Day.
This International Day aims to raise awareness about cancer and to encourage its prevention, detection and treatment. It's possible to defeat cancer, but the treatment should start as early as possible.
Saida is a 50-year-old cancer patient and activist. She encourages all people to opt for cancer screening. She maintains that this can help doctors find and treat several types of cancer at an early stage.
I suffered for 2 years, but early screening saved my life. I know some women and children who died because they were diagnosed very late and doctors could not save them. We can live after a cancer treatment.
Tunisia is hosting an international congress to shed light on urological cancers, lung cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and ovarian cancer. Authorities will organize workshops on anti-cancer drugs, molecular biology, and pediatric oncology on the sidelines of World Cancer Day. According to recent figures published by the Tunisian Association of Medical Oncology, between 11 and 12,000 new cases of cancer are recorded each year in the North African country. The Minister of Health has described these figures as alarming. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, it's time now for your business news, but I'll be standing by with more current affairs, including all the action in sport. But for now, here's Uche with the latest in business.
Thank you, Hannah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Vodacom plans to launch 5G services in South Africa this year. And a 45% stake of Egypt's bank Ducaire is up for sale.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, South Africa's service provider Vodacom is expected to offer 5G mobile services in its home market this year. This comes after a recent roaming agreement with Liquid Telecom that allows mobile network operators to have open access to the new network. Liquid Telecom will launch the first 5th generation wholesale roaming service in South Africa using its share of the spectrum. Now, spectrum allocation has been delayed, thus affecting the rollout of 5G networks in the country. However, South Africa's government has started the process of releasing a spectrum and a policy framework has been published. Meanwhile, Egypt's Bank Misr is seeking to put up for sale a 45% stake of its Bank Ducaire unit on the Egyptian Stock Exchange. The move is aimed at increasing the bank's capital and boosting high profits that could contribute to the success of its initial public offering. The bank also says part of the offered stake will be available for purchase by foreign investors during the initial public offering. Bank Misr is expected to sell the minority stake in the first half of 2020. This, of course, is despite cancelling and postponing an IPO repeatedly over the past 3 years. And to Ethiopia now, the country's government plans to privatize the Ethiopian Sugar Corporation's assets. The sector has been facing challenges that have resulted in many farmers abandoning the industry in recent years. Now, due to poor upkeep and investment, sugarcane farming has been struggling to make a reasonable profit. The privatization of the industry is part of liberalization reforms, which are backed by the country's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. From the sale of assets, the government aims to raise at least $7.5 billion in order to boost foreign exchange in the country. In addition, farmers will also be allowed to buy shares in the mills with promises of investment in additional projects. Now, with China being one of Nigeria's biggest trading partners, there are concerns that the Nigerian economy could take a big hit as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. Now, some businesses are already being affected, as CGTN's Deji Badmus reports.
If there's one place in Africa where almost everyone is hoping for a very quick solution to the coronavirus in China, it is Nigeria, and the reasons are not far-fetched. China is one of Nigeria's biggest trading partners and accounts for the bulk of Nigeria's imports. Trade volume between both countries in 2019 alone hit an estimated $15.3 billion. Analysts say it's a no-brainer that the coronavirus outbreak in China would have economic consequences here. But the question is, to what degree?
In the short term, that is in this quarter we are in now, from January to March, and possibly in the second quarter, April to June, it will have some negative impact on transactions of a short-term nature and products or services that are either perishable or seasonal. So products or services that are meant to be concluded within this short period will be impacted, especially where it requires physical movements. If the importer or exporter needs to go to China, or the exporter or importer in China needs to come to Nigeria, definitely will be impacted.
One man who's hoping and praying a quick solution is found to the coronavirus is Alphonsus Ejidike, a computer accessory dealer. He travels regularly to China for his import, but since the outbreak of the coronavirus, he says he and many others like him have not been able to do so.
The coronavirus has been our headache. We have been thinking about it, talking about it every day. Nobody will have the liver to even try to buy a ticket, regardless of traveling. So for now, everything is standstill. We are just watching and praying that God should help to resolve.
For now, Nigerian businessmen like Ejidike say the impact of the coronavirus on their business is still manageable because they are still well stocked. But they fear that if the situation in China continues for much longer, things might become unmanageable.
We are looking at watching hopelessly, hoping that something good will happen. If not, there will be a disconnect in the supply chain from China to Nigeria, and once the available stock we have finishes, we are all going to be in trouble.
Many are optimistic a solution would be found soon, and that China would eventually contain the coronavirus sooner than later.
What we are seeing now is just postponement of transactions. Both importers and exporters on both sides are postponing transactions they would have done in this quarter and just rescheduling meetings, rescheduling shipments till later parts of the year when this virus is over. So on the whole, it's going to be limited in terms of the annual impact. In terms of our volume for the year is not likely to be significantly different.
China is doing all it can to contain the spread of the coronavirus and bring this whole thing to an end. Businesses here are keenly following developments over there, hoping seriously that things don't get worse before they get better. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, China has denounced measures by the U.S. and other countries denying entry to Chinese citizens because of the coronavirus. Now, it says these nations are acting against World Health Organization recommendations. Here's CGTN's Rory Ruttenberg with more.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, on Monday confirmed that passengers traveling from China will now be funneled through 11 U.S. airports, best equipped to screen passengers for the novel coronavirus. That's up from 7 airports. According to new restrictions put in place over the weekend, Chinese travelers originating in the People's Republic, even those connecting through a third country, would be denied entry to the U.S. Meanwhile, American health officials say they are working with local authorities to decide where individuals who might be infected will be quarantined. They say no option is off the table. They also say the U.S. is working on possibly evacuating more American nationals out of Hubei province. Across the Atlantic, at an executive meeting of the World Health Organization in Geneva, China condemned what it said were excessive restrictions imposed by a number of countries, including visa rejections and denying entry to persons with Hubei-issued passports.
The World Health Organization's temporary recommendations do not recommend any travel and trade restrictions. We are all in this together. It concerns every country and everyone in this world.
The head of the WHO echoed the sentiments, while commending China on the steps it's taken to prevent the spread beyond its borders.
If it weren't for China's efforts, the number of cases outside China would have been very much higher. And it could still be, but we have the opportunity now to work aggressively to prevent that from happening.
On one hand, it seems intuitive, shut down the border, things will spread less. But it has all sorts of other effects that you might not want. For example, preventing the movement of supplies across borders. So I'm one of the majority of people who do not know whether the travel ban is the best way to go. Happily, I'm not the person who has to make that decision.
The WHO also said it was working with Google to ensure that searches yield fact-based scientific results, and that it's also working with social media outlets to help stop the spread of misinformation. Rowie Ruttenberg, CGTN at Dulles International Airport.
Now, Thailand is suffering its worst drought in decades. It is threatening key agricultural exports, including rice, tapioca and sugarcane. Now, experts are saying it could cost the Thai economy more than $500 million. Our correspondent Dusita Sakho reports.
A canal with no water. This could be the clearest sign yet that Thailand is facing a drought crisis. Droughts are a norm in Thailand. The country has been battling with seasonal drought for decades, but this year is different. Experts say that this could be the worst in decades.
We are facing the worst drought in 20 to 40 years. It will become more and more severe as we head into March, April and May, when Thailand is hottest. If we do not make preparations, it will be a very serious problem for the country.
This year, the dry season came earlier than usual and it is predicted to be a prolonged one. 14 large dams held less than 30% of their combined capacity. A major concern as Thailand is only about 2 months into its usual dry season and reservoir levels are already low.
The drought situation across nearly half of Thailand is predicted to get worse, with the government warning 31 provinces to prepare for severe drought. This dry spell imperils crop production and rural demand in a nation where 11 million people work in the agricultural industry. Signs of water wars are beginning to appear.
As rivers and dams dry up, groundwater emerges as new battleground in the fight for water. Farmers in Chachen Sao, one of Thailand's rice-growing provinces, are becoming increasingly desperate for water to irrigate their parched fields. So desperate, farmers are fighting over this precious resource.
Everyone here is desperate. Factories are not facing shortages like we are. Farmers cannot get water from anywhere. Imagine the cost of fertilizer and pesticides. We feel helpless.
But it is not only rural Thailand that should be concerned. Some residents of Bangkok can literally taste the risk of potentially damaging drought. The capital's tap water became saline as seawater pushed up the depleted Chao Phraya River, a source of much of central Thailand's water. Thai authorities are trucking drinking water to parts of Bangkok and urging residents to shower less as a worsening drought and rising sea levels have increased salinity.
When rivers have less water, seawater come in. When rivers have more water, seawater is pushed out. At the moment, water in the river is very low, so we have a problem with salt intrusion. It will get worse.
Farmers are worried. Industries are worried. Rural Thailand feeling helpless, considering the essentiality of water and the implications of who gets the last drop. Dusita Sakho, CGTN, Pathum Thani, Thailand.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz. But coming up later on Global Business Africa, a South African court has issued an arrest warrant for former President Jacob Zuma. We'll bring you more on that at top of the hour. For now, back to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Uche. We'll see you in a bit. Well, here's more stories coming up after the break. We tell you how a village in Egypt is helping to preserve the production of an ancient writing material.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, papyrus is one of the most common material used as writing surface in the ancient world. One village in Egypt still cultivates a papyrus plant and produces the thick paper almost in the same way as their ancestors did. CGTN's Adela Maruchi brings us that story.
About 2 hours' drive east of Cairo, Karamos appears to be a village left behind in time. Here, the ancient Egyptian plant papyrus is still being cultivated and processed into paper. The craft has been introduced to the village in 1977, creating job opportunities for the entire village.
We produce almost the same quality of paper like the pharaohs, I'd say at about 95%. We use a compressor, they used stones. They dried using cartons, so do we. It's the same concept. We have inherited this craft from our grandfathers.
Karamos' economy depended on papyrus, and more importantly on preserving its ancient production techniques. With the drop of tourists, however, in 2011, demand on the ancient paper dropped. Papyrus was cultivated almost on every piece of land here. Today, it is only on 10%.
Our business doesn't depend on the production of the acre. We sell papyrus by piece. If we have tourists, we can ask for a good price per paper. If tourism in Egypt is weak, prices go down. Today we sell at less than 50 US cents for the sheet of paper. We are barely covering our costs.
Still, manufacturing papyrus paper is the only craft many villagers here have grown to know. Luckily, that has protected the plant. Economically, this unique industry could perish. It's why Egypt wants the UNESCO to preserve it as a world cultural heritage. If that happens, this village can once again thrive.
Many countries tried to cultivate papyrus abroad. It wasn't successful. We hope to reach markets abroad to export our papers to print houses. We have a lot of production. We have the workforce and we can expand cultivation.
Papyrus production could be a lucrative business. Every part of the plant can be used. It has flowers, its roots are sold to pharmaceuticals for medicine production, and the rest of the plant can be turned into cattle food. It is planted all year long and can be printed upon by almost all modern techniques. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
It's time now for us to take a short break. Here's some of the sport action coming up when we return. Senegal ready to face Liberia in 2020 Women African Cup of Nations qualifier first leg.
How would you create your legend? On the field,